Hello! Welcome to Why Not Both, the podcast all about how our multiple passions and interests shape our identity and our lives. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I am a musician and therapist in Los Angeles, and I also happen to be your host. This podcast is produced by Laura Studeris, and for this season, we've partnered up with Under the Radar magazine. If you like what you hear, you can hang out with us on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WNB the podcast. And if you really, really like what you hear, please support us on Patreon. We are under Why Not Both podcast. When you join our Patreon, you get a whole bunch of really cool behind the scenes stuff and you get to chat with us. And that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy our interviews. This week, we were thrilled to get to catch up with Devon Gilfillian, and I hope that you enjoy our interview.
You have to do it where you can do it.
Exactly. I'm like, welcome to Why Not Both, where we do it wherever you can, really.
Just like... where you can do it.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. So welcome. My producer saw you performing and was like, we must have this individual on the podcast.
Oh, damn. Are we allowed to curse on this podcast? Am I allowed?
Yes, vehemently and with great enthusiasm.
Okay, yes. Shit. Oh, shit.
There we go.
That makes me feel fucking awesome. That's amazing.
Yes.
Where did they see me?
She was at a folk festival recently.
Newport.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh my God, that was magical. It was magical.
Oh, what
really,
made?
I mean, so I got to cover all of Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On" from front to back, the whole album, and you know, just like got to meet some new friends and met like Nathaniel Rateliff, and like fell in love with that guy. He's such a sweetheart, and he came up and sang "What's Going On" with us, and so did Jess Wolf from Lucius, and Aaron Ray, and Courtney Marie Andrews, and who else? Langhorne Slim, and man, like we just had like a whole party up on stage, and people guesting, Joy Ladakun, and like Cam Franklin from the Suffers, and it felt like a giant like party and a big family, and like everybody was like crying at the end. It was insane. It was insane. It was definitely the highlight of this past tour. This like we had like a little 2-week run, and I mean it was like a really great introduction to getting back on the road.
It's funny. I was like, oh, my follow-up question would be what made it magical, and then I was like, well, you definitely answered that. It's like Marvin Gaye crying at the end. Like I was like, yeah, that nailed it.
You know, making Nathaniel Rateliff cry with your song is a pretty, like, I'm like, all right, I did pretty good. I did a good thing.
You've done
good. I'm also becoming friends with him. He just seems, I'm just like him and his whole band, and we got the like jam with his band and got on stage with him and Tommy Prine, like John Prine's grandson, and it was just such a beautiful, just felt like summer camp, you know.
Oh. Well, especially when you said that it ended this 2-week tour. Was that, I'm guessing that's the first tour that you've been on in quite a while.
A long time. We also got to get on stage with Shaka Khan and sing I'm every woman and ain't nobody. That was like Allison Russell's, she had a set. She's an amazing singer-songwriter who was in a band called Birds of Chicago, and for her set she brought up a bunch of people, and her surprise guest was Shaka Khan, and And she was like, if you want to get up on stage in the background and sing, with us, like you can get on stage. I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna be on stage.
Yep, you're like, I will just even stand there. I'll just be there.
I'll just be there, just doing anything, like anything.
Hand me a tambourine. Just throw me in.
Tambourine, shaker, egg. You don't even have to I'll pretend I'm shaking an egg. But yeah, that was the first like run that we've done since the pandemic.
How did that feel? Because during the pandemic, were you doing any live streams or were you recording or like, it was interesting talking to people through this because people went through what I dubbed the phase where you're kind of just a potato in a microwave. Like we're not really sure if it's baking, it's just rotating around. And that was
Yeah.
I think everyone went through a solid potato phase at one point. But I guess what were you up to during that time? And then how did you feel touring?
Man, I mean, so many things, Pam. I think, like, yeah, we did some live streams, but not that many. I didn't really want to do that many live streams because I'm just like, this time isn't like for, yeah, like it's cool to do some, but I think there's so much cooler creative things to be doing other than live stream. The podcasts, I love that. Like start a podcast, get on a podcast, talk on a podcast. Like that's, if you got some fun, interesting stuff to talk about, do it. But like, I don't know, it's hard for me to connect with like an artist like jamming out so hard and it's like glitching and stuff. And it's like, oh man. But so I just took this time to like write as much as I could and also like figure out what how to connect with my fans like without being on the road.
Yeah.
And that's why I did the What's Going On thing and I kind of like I knew that this was just going to be a period of time, a short period of time, and then we'd be back. And
right,
of course, fingers crossed, knocking on wood.
I was gonna say, I'm like, where can I'll knock on a moog.
Yeah, there we go. Like we gotta get everybody in line and on the same track so we can keep live music going. And hey, if you got to get vaccinated, if you can get vaccinated, then do it. Like just do it. It's now we're at the point where like if we just got to protect people who can't get vaccinated.
Yes. And also, the science behind vaccines is so that we can also stop the virus from having as many hosts so it can't mutate as much, because that's why it's getting worse, is that it learns. Viruses are smart, they learn. We just need to give it fewer schools.
Yes, exactly. We got to, yep, 100%, Pam. I'm there with you. I'm all about it. I got my Pfizer flavor all in me and I'm good to go. So like that to me, getting on the same page. Also, just over this past year, I think the main thing that I was focused on was getting Donald Trump out of the White House.
Yes.
And it was kind of like the fire that was in the middle of the kitchen and you're like trying, like at first, like it was just like a kind of like smoking like pan that was just like, man, that pan's got to get cleaned. It's real greasy and nasty. It really needs to, it smokes when I turn it on. And then like this year in 2020, it was just on fire. And you're like, nah, I can't.
Like actively, it's on fire, just constantly.
I can't make my Annie's mac and cheese around this fire that's happening, right? I got to put this out or my house is going to burn down. I can't write songs, anything. I got to put this fucking fire out. So that was, to me, that like, that politics kind of became a fire, the kitchen that's on fire for me. that had to be put out before I could do anything. And
Yes.
like, you know, because really we're still really fighting. We're fighting so hard to convince people that they need to get vaccinated, like, and you know, and really, like, you know, we do live in a country where we have so many privileges, and like we have so many freedoms, and getting vaccinated and the government telling people to get vaccinated is not them taking away your freedom. It's them saying, hey, like, you have an option. You can not get vaccinated if you want, but you gotta stick this Q-tip up your nose every day then.
Right? I think that people mistake individual freedom for like freedom from consequence. And you're like, you could make
Right?
a choice. There's a lot of choices you could make, but here are some of the consequences of those choices.
Yep.
Like, and
Exactly.
you know, that is the beauty of having freedom of choice, but unfortunately, we are not free from logical consequence.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yep.
As you see me just like stare into the middle distance. Like, oh
It's
my gosh. And
yeah.
when you were saying about, you know, that in a way like politics came to the forefront, you were talking about the what's going on and covering that and whatnot. Explain to people kind of what you were doing and how those like dovetailed, because yeah, I was like, I'm curious about all of that.
You know, so like as far as when it all when George Floyd was killed, that was when it really the political, I really felt like the gaslighting was on fire from Donald Trump. Like, I felt like there was no way you can deny this.
Right.
And then he then provoked more violence, you know, and then, you know, was very much he was normalizing hate towards protesters. It was like he was just stirring the pot, and it was, to me, it was really crazy. It was like, it felt like, yo, hey, yo, hey, anybody else see this? Anybody else? Does anyone else see this guy, like, just like throwing a pile of shit and lighting it on fire,
Uh-huh.
and then being like, hey, who lit that pile of shit on fire? Like,
Yes.
come on, y'all.
It's like that meme of like, who could have done this?
It was mind blowing. I mean, the everything with COVID was blowing my mind insanely. But then when George Floyd happened, that was insane. And then I went out to a protest, and I was like, man, I want to bring music and peace to this protest. I want to figure out how to do that. And so I went home and learned what's going on acoustic, and I was going to take that out to the protest, and I just broke down crying as I was learning it, and at that moment realized what Marvin Gaye was trying to say, and was just like, really, my mind was just blown that 50 years ago this song came out, and like, and we still haven't really heard the message of this entire record. And that was really what I was like, how do I use this record to fight voter suppression in this country? If I could do it in Tennessee, if I could do it anywhere, I'll do it here. I'll do it locally, and then figure out what voices I want on this record to help.
Right.
You know, and I want to highlight Black voices, you know, and voices of color, and women's voices, and like, and also my cat throwing up
Oh.
in the background on the rug.
Oh.
You can't, if you can hear that.
Oh, that's adorable.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
I love that.
Barry White just throwing up on the rug. Never on the hardwood. There's hardwood everywhere.
Oh no. Whenever cats throw up, I think that they actually look for the most porous location.
Yeah.
You're like, is it the rug? Is it the bedspread? Let me find like the hardest place that you could possibly try and clean, and that is where I will do
Is it
this.
fresh? Is it new?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you love it? Especially if you love it. Oh my gosh.
But
But
yes, Marvin Gaye, what's going on? I wanted to. It all came together around that, and yeah, I'm really. It was the best education, musical education that I've gotten in a long time.
I was gonna say it sounds like in a way, not only was it kind of like edifying in like a community sense, but it sounds like it was personally incredibly inspiring to do that.
So much, so inspiring, and like also everyone that I wanted to like that I wanted involved, it was so easy. Like they immediately were like, yep, I'm into that. I'm down. I want to do that.
That's when you know you're on a good path.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so lucky. Like, um, yeah, yeah. I'm grateful for everybody that hopped in, and it like really solidified relationships with people in community here in Nashville that I have, and showed me how deep it goes and how strong it is, and yeah, yeah. It brought a lot of meaning to just like what I'm doing as a musician.
Right. Well, and it puts it in context both like musically and then like you said, like kind of your community in Nashville. We're at a time particularly when it was really funny, like seeing all those ads of like, we're alone together. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
like, that's a kind of a weird dichotomy there. But it showed you it showed you kind of like particularly at such a disconnected time, like both musician community and then you were talking about like connecting with your fan community as well. Like, do you feel like this also connected you more to the people who listen to your music anyway?
Absolutely, absolutely, it did, and I think it also allowed me to stop tippy toeing around what I really want to say and how I want to say it, and like really diving into the conversation that needs to happen around race, around politics, around religion, and everything, like all of it, like
Yeah.
because evangelistic Christianity, like is supposed to be all about love and all these things, and it's you know that's not where the money's going,
Right.
and like I think that it's time to hold people accountable. That's all. And the only way to do that is if you have a voice, use it.
Yeah, like it's interesting to me that you said like, that you didn't want to have to kind of tiptoe around your beliefs. It's strange to me when people tell artists to not be political because I'm like, well, what's the point of art if it's not making you think differently about
Right?
the systems you're in and about like what you're feeling? It's like, then why are you engaging with this at all? Like,
A
what are you doing?
100%, 100%. Like it's and like people say the same thing about pro athletes, and stop talking about politics and just play ball. It's like, well, no, actually, I'm gonna do what I want. I'm gonna talk about politics, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
do it loudly because I have a platform, and I should do it. Like it really money is and power is the only way to really hold this capitalistic like country accountable sometimes. And it
Yeah.
really, when you take the money out, when you stop people from spending, you
Yeah.
can you can really hurt some people. You can hurt the big man.
That's what I find so fascinating about like the current landscape where, I mean, you and I are both in like the arts field, and I also work as a therapist. It's like those fields are kind of outside of that structure a bit. But like I've been reading articles where people are saying, well, no one wants to work at jobs anymore. And it's like, no, 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 people actually do enjoy, I think that people enjoy doing things. Like, I don't think there's really many people who, I'm sure there's someone that enjoys sitting around and not doing stuff. But for the most part, people like to actually, they're curious about the world. They like to have agency in it, but they don't like to be exploited. I think that that's what people are missing. It's not that people don't want to have a job. It's just that they don't want to be like underpaid and not have health insurance. The
Right?
problem is not the job. Like,
Uh,
it's like,
it's really, really crazy to, that we're starting to see in this country where the cracks are. And like, yeah, like, no, like the labor shortage is because, I was listening to the Daily and the other day, and like the labor shortage is because the jobs aren't paying people enough.
right.
They're not paying people well enough. They're not giving them health insurance. They're overworking people, especially in the service industry.
Yes.
And like it's at the end of the day, like, what do you expect? If you don't give people dignity, which is a job that puts a roof over their head, that gives them health care, that they can maybe then work towards saving for a house.
Yes.
If you make that actual dream, which is not even, it's not even plausible for so many people.
Right.
If you made that a reality for people, then that's something that maybe you can get behind. People can get behind, but that's not even being talked about.
Yeah. And it's that to not provide people with a certain level of dignity or security, then why would you expect that they'd be like, oh, you know what? I love being treated poorly. Please do more of that. Like, no. It was interesting the way that you framed it, of like that we can see kind of like the cracks in our systems, the cracks in our society. Like you said, that it started off as just sort of, oh, this pan kind of smolders a bit when I use it, to, oh my God, my entire kitchen is on fire. Like, I think that particularly with what happened last summer, I'm glad that you're highlighting it through the arts, because I think in a lot of ways, people who aren't in the Black community are now seeing, like, essentially, oh, we're being treated the same way that Black people have been treated in this country the whole time. This is terrible. It's
Yeah.
like, surprise. Like COVID, I think, highlighted that. And so I'm glad that you're bringing light to it with the arts, because I think for some people it's challenging to confront that, and it can bring up like defensiveness in people or denial and things like that. And so couching it in terms of the arts as people are coming to this realization is a great way to go. is how I'd put that.
It's the sugar coated, it's the sugar in the coffee for sure,
Oh yeah.
right? Like and it's necessary, and you gotta somehow get the message through to people in some kind of way, and uh, that's it. Inspiration, man. Inspiration is an emotion, because people listen to emotion more than they listen to facts.
Yes.
They let emotions drive their decisions, as opposed to seeing some fact on a piece of paper, or a doctor giving some fact, they, which is crazy. But we got to know this. We have to know
Yes.
this about ourselves and about humans.
Yeah, because humans are a mix. I was just talking to someone about this, is that like, obviously I as a human am in the same. It's like we're a mix of logic and emotions. And so like, frankly, our decisions should kind of feature both because you can't really deny one or the other. So it's like, yeah, of course you want to take your feelings into account, but it's like feelings aren't facts. Like they're great information, but like that's different than a fact. And so you want to pause and be like, well, how do I want to make this decision based on the information I have from my feelings and like the facts I have from logic? And it's like kind of put them together and make like a nice synthesis there. Um, but if you're just going off of one, like, because I think if you're only going off of logic, you're going to miss something. Like you said, you need the sugar coating. You can't hand someone a cupcake made of just frosting. Like you need to have like a cake in there. You need to have like some sort of foundation.
Gotta be some nutrients in there somewhere.
Yes, maybe it's like a zucchini cupcake, but they don't know.
Yeah. Here we go. Zucchini banana bread.
Exactly.
But you gotta have some kind of truth. You gotta weigh it out. Get different sources. All that stuff.
Because connecting emotionally, I think is so important in like even talking to people about things like voter suppression. Because if you're just like, here's the facts of it, people either like glaze over or they just get upset. And then they're like, now I don't even know what to do.
Yeah, it's really, you're always gonna have people on the complete opposite side too, and somehow you got to find a place in the middle. You have to somehow show them that everybody is really trying to get to the same place.
Yeah.
And because really, the people who believe that Donald Trump actually won and there was fraud and all that jazz, when you try to tell them that there is the voter suppression,
Right.
their priority, their issue of priority with voting is completely different, and like and like you can't, it's so hard to not want to invalidate, and you have to be like, listen, there is fraud in voting, but it's not what you think it is.
It's one of those, that word might not mean exactly what you think it means.
It's not what you think it is. And if we're actually looking at the facts and not going off of cousin Susan's emotional rant at at Pathmark or giant grocery store, like like no, like we have to look at some like legitimate journals and facts and like not, we'll look at CNN and we'll look at Fox News and we'll look at routers, and we'll look at CBS.
Yeah, just get a fuller scope.
We got to get the full scope, and everybody has different problems and different issues, and like we have to be like, okay, these are your problems that you believe are problems, and I don't want to invalidate those, but let me tell you that those you think those are some problems, me and my people are having some problems too.
Yeah, here's this other set.
Here's the other side here. Like, let's look at all the sides, and there are just people that just don't look.
No, it's very, and I think that building that empathy it's challenging. So I admire what you're doing through the arts. Like one of my friends covers protests, like yeah, like there's like all the like, anti-mask protests and like things like that. And what's so fascinating is exactly what you're talking about, that it's like a lot of the people that show up to particularly those protests recently are so enveloped in their own narrative of having problems. And like, everyone has problems. Like everybody at some point has problems. Like that we're just going to take for granted. But they have difficulty seeing that one, other people have problems, and two, that those problems might actually look very different than theirs. There's
Yeah.
this difficulty of getting outside of that narrative. And
Yeah.
he's found that like the best way to approach it is to just approach people neutrally.
Right. And like everyone has different problems. Everyone has problems. And like if we all just sat and said, you know what? Like let me listen to my homie's problems over here. Maybe I can help them. Maybe let me listen to this. Like maybe I can help. Like it's crazy. It's crazy, and it's crazy how that, you know, how it's wild how, you know, I'm not like a super religious person, but I believe in God, and to me, I think that Jesus was a cool dude, and you know, would for sure be like, what the fuck is happening? Like with
I say that as a very confused, expired Jew. Like I was raised
yeah. like I you know, like, and sure same thing with Moses, I'm sure.
what, like, okay, so like being raised Jewish, I'm watching all of this and I keep thinking, I'm like, am I missing something? Was there something that I missed here? Like I've read the New Testament, like that doesn't seem to be what I read.
No, it's all getting read the wrong way. It's all getting spun the wrong way. But all at the end of the day, like, you know, Jesus would be wanting everybody to really be looking, loving each other and looking at each other's issues and pain and wounds and trying to tend to those wounds
Yes.
and like it's wild how it kind of got turned around. It turned way around.
Yes.
But
That's wild to me. And I'm glad you brought that up because there is so much. It was interesting that you touched on the political and also the religious, because I do feel like at least in our country, there's a conflation of the two.
yeah, and it's unfortunately it's tied together, you know, as far as like, you know, the Republican Party is has that the moral majority kind of tied tied in with it, and it to me it's just insanely hypocritical in so many ways. So like if only to me if the church really saw Donald Trump for what he was, then hell no, they wouldn't voted for him and
Right?
like supported the Republican Party after so many of all the shit that
I
he
think
said. Yeah,
some of it goes back to what you were talking about with money, where it's like there's the two axes of like there's money and there's power.
money,
Um,
money.
that's the only thing I can think of that would like inform that kind of cognitive dissonance and hypocrisy is like, where's the money? Like, is someone getting profit from that? Like, because otherwise, yeah, when you look at it, it logically doesn't make sense and it doesn't emotionally resonate. So I'm like, where is that coming from? Like,
It's the abortion thing, and it's also, I don't know how abortion got tied into
yeah,
the morality of Christianity, which it wasn't always there, but it got tied in.
yet again, no textual evidence. That was the other thing that like I feel weird like saying this, but it's like being raised not in that religion. I was always like very careful to be like, well, I don't want to be critical of something that's not mine and that I wasn't raised in, but like I did look for evidence for it to be like, what's informing these views? And I'm like, low key nothing question mark. Like,
Yeah.
like I'm big on research. You might have noticed I'm like, I like to read a lot of things. I like to kind of like investigate. I'm very curious about things. And so I always want to find like, you know, like what's informing someone's views? Like where is it coming from? What are multiple ways to look at it? Like, so if like if I'm plumbing into the depths of something and don't find anything, I'm like, well, where'd you get that from? Like,
right? And either way, it's just insanely silly that that is being prioritized over so many things that would make human life better on this in this country
yeah, yeah,
by far, but in so many ways. And so, but you know, it's one day I think in the new generations of kids that aren't getting
yes.
shit, you know, they're gonna come up and hopefully they'll burn it down.
That's on one hand, it's very interesting because I have a lot of faith in Gen Z, and I also understand why sometimes they're like, why'd you guys mess everything up and then expect us to fix it? Like we can't fix everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
like well, I don't know. You know, it. They say it just the bullshit kind of recircles. You know, it reinvents itself, but also hopefully we get smarter and better.
I do think that Gen Z is in some ways wiser, like as a tired elder millennial. I often am like, I offer my support and here's some water and some sunscreen. I'm on your team. It's like go forth. um, but like I think that at least like the millennial generation, as I perceive it, is like the last that we kind of did buy into like, well, the system seems a little wonky, but maybe it'll work. Whereas like Gen Z is like, no, none of this.
This
It's
ain't. We
all
gotta
bad.
restart. We gotta hit the restart button.
Exactly, exactly.
Straight up.
So that at least that does give me hope that there's no delusion in there that like any of this works.
They know. They know. Like
Yeah.
we really there's so much work that needs to be done and so much shit that needs to be rewritten and I hope I hope that we can get Gen Z can help, we'll help, we can do it. We can do it. I believe in us, you know.
Well, and what's the response been from your fan base like since you actually did start talking about all this and you did release what's going on? It's like what has people's response been? Like what's happened since then?
You know, people have been so supportive.
Oh,
They really have. And people have been so I feel like my true allies in this town have showed up and like really I've found like such support not only with fans but like with like fellow artists in Nashville and in in the United States um and yeah, there's been like a couple people like you know who unfollow and write messages like I don't want to write you know blah 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 like look at this stuff you're sheep you know but some
oh,
you know stuff like that and like I'm just like hey listen like I have nothing but love for you and your decision like there's not I like there's no bad blood and but some people yeah they can't handle like me you
yeah.
know me having using my voice and but I feel like honestly it's been more of a net gain for sure.
Right. And even it's interesting because I think about the people who it's kind of like watching people angrily leave a Facebook group.
Yeah.
Like it kind of reminds me of like when someone leaves a party like in a huff and then like they come back a minute later being like, I forgot my jacket.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Everyone else is like, okay.
Yeah, you really didn't have to do that. You made
Exactly.
yourself look like a ding dong.
That's pretty much how I feel when you're describing people being like, I can't listen to you because you have opinions. It's like, cool. Okay.
Yes, you really didn't listen to any of my songs and what they were about at all. Like you just like didn't hear it at all.
It was like the people that were surprised by the content in Rage Against the Machine songs recently. I was like, Well, did you not listen to
Rage is ever like that is like the most to me. It's like
that? Yeah.
uh
How'd you miss that? Yeah.
Scott De La Roca's just or Zach De La Roca's just killing like killing Bush.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And that just flew by some people. And so, yeah, it's kind of, I chalk it up to then like either that person's going to realize that at some point. Some people just double down on being foolish, but like some people, afterwards, when they can actually sit and think about like, why did I decide to unfollow this person because they were, like, why am I so offended by something I don't agree with?
Right. And you can't force people to see outside of their bubble. Like they just have to like somehow bust out and be like, oh
Right.
wow, like I was really had shades on. People got shades on, and you gotta live other people's lives and try and put yourself in other people's shoes.
Well, and there's also no shame in saying like, hey, I did have these on before and now I've taken them off and wow, it's really bright and I'm very squinty and might be doing things kind of wonky, but like I'm doing my best. Like,
Absolutely, and that's bravery, man. Like that's the most brave thing you can do is take the shades off and be like, oh, I'm looking through, trying to look through your view, your shades, look through your glasses and see what you see, and I'm definitely feels like I'm drunk right now. Help me understand.
help me understand what's going on here. Yeah, because building empathy, even thinking of the people that we were talking about, like the whole vaccine debate, like there are people that are in some of my social feeds who I do purposefully keep people in there that have different views so that I can see like what, for instance, like there's this one woman who's posting about how like awful it is that they, were saying nurses were heroes last year, but now like they're saying they're awful. Like that was her perception of like that they're asking nurses to get vaccinated. That she was seeing this as like an affront. And to me, it was so interesting to see that because I was like, oh, now I understand that you think that like we're punishing people or that we are we're taking away their accomplishments or we're saying like that our appreciation for what they did last year is conditional. So it helps me understand that better. So that way, if I'm talking to someone, if it comes up, I can be like, oh, like, of course, we still valorize everything they did. This is yet another thing that we can do to help protect people. This absolutely is in no way taking away from their accomplishment last year and for all their hard work last year. So it's like understanding more about like what someone's argument is or like what someone's point is so valuable because then you can empathize and be like, oh, this person thinks that like you're being mean to nurses essentially.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's the emotional issue you're talking about here. Whereas if I was talking to that person and just was talking to them about like individualism versus like collectivism, like it wouldn't land. So I have to learn like, well, how is this other person thinking? What are they feeling? Otherwise you kind of can't dialogue.
Yeah, and context is so critical too. Just like knowing you can give someone the same exact fact,
Yes.
but then with a different emotion behind it, it can just make you feel a completely different way. You can
Yes.
feel angry about it, or you can feel so grateful about it. Like
yes.
and you have to know when people are really like twisting on your emotions.
Yes. And also even like when you get like, I mean, I get emotionally activated about stuff too. It's not like I'm just sitting here being like, oh,
Totally. We are just as susceptible,
yes.
and
Yes.
I like I studied psychology in college actually. Like I got a bachelor's in psych, and
Awesome.
so like it was really, and that makes me, I feel like it makes me no less susceptible at all. Like I
Right.
I like it all still I still am like motherfucker things, and I get triggered very easily, but like at least I feel like it's interesting to see how easy, like how social media has become such a powerful form of
Yes.
propaganda and misinformation, and because it is the most powerful form of information, of course it's going to be the most powerful form of misinformation.
Misinformation.
and
Yes.
and like people don't really, if you don't, if people can't tell the difference, which that is the genius and the evil that Donald Trump has created, then then people are very easily manipulated.
Yes. I was curious if you found like a palpable difference interacting with people in the tour that you did versus interacting with people through social media around your art and around the messages you've been spreading, because yeah. And essentially in the last year and a half, like really all we had was social media. So I was like, was that different interacting with people? I'm like such like a child of the internet. I'm like IRL.
It was like, as far as the difference between interacting with people online and in person, like to be honest, like I don't necessarily, like I'll I'll react, like respond back to people's sometimes on social media for like stories, and
Yeah.
and like little stories that I post are so stupid. They're usually about my cats and like things that I'm cooking, and like,
Excellent.
so I've always had like positive, like it's always been good vibes on my social media. Like there's never really been
Right.
anyone like, there's only, like I said, been a couple people been like, peace out, sheep, but but
The accusation is always like sheep or like,
sheep.
or
I'm
like
like, man.
wake up. Like, and I'm just like, oh dear. Oh dear. Like,
Mm. It's so great. It's so
oh
fun.
my God.
I'm the one who's a sheep. Yep, yep, yep.
Oh, cool.
And so yeah, so like, but and in person, you know, I'd say, especially this past couple weeks, it was insane. It was The reception has been so beautiful, so
Oh,
beautiful. Like, and people are so excited and hungry for music and want healing. They want
yes.
they want they want to they want to heal, and I feel that. So I feel like, yeah, that's what I want to bring this year and the next year, and just in general, that's what I want to provide is musical healing.
I love that. And like, I mean, that brings us full circle to why you're on the podcast, is that you did provide that for Laura, who produces it. Like
Ah,
she was messaging me from the show being like, oh my God, you got to hear this guy.
that's amazing.
So I was like, all right, you got one. I had the distinct feeling you got more.
Uh, that's amazing. Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you for being so generous with your time today.
No sweat. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Pam. It's been awesome to hang. And next time I'm in LA, I'll let you know. I'm playing the Greek actually in October.
What? That's one of my very favorite places here.
I'm pumped. We're playing with Marcus King and Greta Van Fleet.
Wow.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of Why Not Both. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and on Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who is literally a rock star. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next episode.